Hi, this is Dana, and on this channel I speak about spiritual warfare. I have another channel on which I speak about astrology. In this video I will talk about both issues, spiritual fighting for bondage breaking, but also from an astrological point of view. So this video will focus on the role played by astrology in bondage breaking, sort of bringing together the two topics, right? Because at the end of the day, that's the purpose, to understand from astrology enough ancient wisdom to help us carry on this spiritual fight in ascending from 3D. So I will begin by saying that basically the elements have a very important role to play in your in defining who you are, in defining your natal chart, of course. But more importantly, they have, this is already known, but what is new information that I want to point out, which transpired through my investigations, spiritual investigations, is that also elements play a huge role in defining your ancestral lineage, or lineages if you have more than one, which means that it also determines the type of karma that you came here to break, or not necessarily to break, but I mean, you have to break it. It's basically part of who you are. It's part of your ancestral lineage. Each element essentially, we have 4 elements, right? We have earth, air, water, and fire. Each element works with their own deities, their own forces. Unfortunately, individuals from different background related to astrological elements decided also to work with different type of forces from outer cosmos. And this relates to secret cults, which I have been talking about, the religious spirituality, the satanic cults, or whatever type of worshipping they do, and they decided to conjure different type of forces to help them in their work with darkness, and each basically is focused, empowered by these forces, and of course they are even claimed by these forces, because keep in mind that we are talking about ancestral lineage. That means all that your ancestors have done. So some of your ancestors, first of all, we will begin by saying that you might have more than just one lineage. You might be resolved, and this is valid specifically for karmics. This is very important to know, that most karmics are the result of crossbreeds between different lineages, right? And in this case, you don't have just your own element sign, but you also have the inheritance, which also means sometimes karma, sometimes negative karma, from your ancestors, which means you might have negative karma from more than just one lineage, right? And you might have 2 or more lineages. You will have to work to break and pay the negative karma for all ancestral lineages. And it's not all about what astrological sign you are, but you also carry the karma, and you have to pay and break the bondages and pay the karma for your ancestors. And if they come from different lineages, then you refer to different lineages. And if any of them have been involved in these cults which worship different type of forces, you must keep in mind that you will be claimed by those forces as being the successor of the lineage which conjured those forces and made different promises and sacrifices and offerings to those forces. If your ancestors worked with darkness and were part of these secret cults, convents, and so on, then keep in mind that those type of forces, darkness, claim you, even if you're completely innocent. And this God asked me to talk about this today for different reasons, but one of the reasons is in order to convey the message to everyone to understand that some of the things that you are facing, some of the darkness attacks that you are facing are not necessarily your fault, but it is part of what you must do in order to stay in light, basically. And here we're not talking about fairness. This is how things are, basically. Religious spirituality cults play a huge role in this. And again, I say, if someone from your lineage or any of the lineages that are part of your ancestral line, if any of them was member in one of these cults and made, for example, sacrifices, promises, offerings to those forces in their name, but also in the name of the lineage, then those forces will claim you, and these secret cults will use this in their rituals. So they essentially will behave like you belong to them, even if you never crossed paths in this lifetime with these individuals. You were never told about it, you don't know about it, you had nothing to do with them. Then you must understand that these claims exist, and the type of darkness that is being sent to you throughout your entire life comes from this. Okay, so this is very important. You must also consider this information when you decide to become a couple with someone, because each of you has different ancestral line, and each of you could, not necessarily, but could have more than one lineage in their ancestral line, then carrying the karma and fighting against the karma of different elements, more elements, not just one. Okay, so and I will give you one example so you will understand it better. For example, I said in previous videos, there are certain darkness forces which come after you because of your lineage. It's not because of what you have done in this lifetime. It is because who you are supposed to be, the divine gifts you have, what you represent for them. Again, I remind everyone that I explained this is a fight of domination and survival and domination over Earth. So different type of lineages, different type of forces are at war with each other, and this is a war of extermination, because they want to either subdue the other lineages or to just exterminate the lineage if it doesn't submit. So if you have two of these in your ancestral lineage, then it becomes much more difficult for you. And you have to take this in consideration when you decide to become a couple with someone, when you decide to make a partnership with someone, because that someone might have a type of darkness attack which is not compatible for a partnership with you. I'll give you one example. There was an individual throughout my spiritual fighting and bondage breaking. I learned from God, obviously, about a certain individual whom I never met in my life, but I knew of him. He was a great artist. He died way before I started my conscious spiritual fighting, so he was not alive when I learned this. But I learned that that individual was part of my lineage. Actually, he was from two different lineages. He was a crossbreed. But in any case, I learned about this individual and his spiritual fighting. I was in huge admiration for the achievements he actually accomplished. And I asked God why I never met this individual then, because I think he could have helped me in spiritual fighting if I would have met him. And God has shown me that, for example, he comes from fire lineage. So the element for one of his lineages is fire. And the type of darkness that was attacking him because of his lineage was very strong. And if he would have met me, he wasn't going to be able to fight, to achieve those accomplishments in terms of spiritual fighting. Because that lineage under element of fire was at war with my lineage. So basically what he said, I stopped the two of you from meeting, because this way he broke a lot of bondages. He actually is now an ascendant master because of this. But if you would have met, he wouldn't have been able to have done all of this, because he was able to fight against it only because he didn't meet you. As he carried on this fight with the type of darkness which his own lineage conjured in order to destroy your lineage. So I hope this is a clear example, but this is an example which I'm giving in order to understand that this is much more complicated than it might seem. Decisions, and I said previously, we all came in 3D in order to ascend to 5D. To ascend to 5D, we must carry on a spiritual fight. This is a reality. There are certain information, and this is why I'm making these videos, and this is why I share the information I gain through my spiritual fighting, because these are extremely important, so we all can carry on successful spiritual fighting and ascend. And this information is hidden information, because we are in 3D. This is controlled by the matrix. They made a point in hiding the information from us in order so we cannot fight, you know. So again, when you make a decision to become a couple, to make any kind of partnership for that matter, you must have your own divine guidance and understand all of this information. This is very important, because you might consider, and even you might be drawn to make partnerships and a couple relation and love relation with individuals from a lineage which is sort of at war with your lineage. This is my dog, who's Lucky. He fell asleep, so he's dreaming somehow, but the darkness which is being sent here affects his dreams, of course. So this is very important to keep in mind when you make decisions, because two different innocent people might destroy each other because of the inheritance from their own ancestral line. This is very important to understand. Because we are all grown-ups and we need to make responsible decisions. And you cannot be thinking on a short term that you like someone and you should just have a partnership or a relation with that one. Because, again, if you leave that one individual alone, as I gave you this example, he might be able to survive and carry on the fight. And if you come together, it might be too difficult, too blinding for him or for you to actually be able to carry on the fight, you know, because of what was done in the past by by ancestors, right? So this is very, very important to understand, and you must keep this in mind, especially when you go through the dark night of the soul. Because I remember when I went through all of this spiritual fighting, that I couldn't understand how come these type of forces come after me, you know? How come? Is it possible, for example, the fire, God actually asked me to say this, the fire element people that were involved in different secret societies and cults of religious spirituality are the ones who conjured Anunnaki and androgens and transgenders. Androgens and transgenders actually are, let's say, sort of the army of Anunnaki. This is the army that Anunnaki is using. So they work for Anunnaki essentially. If anyone from your lineage or anyone that you consider to become a couple or make a partnership with is from a fire element, or has somebody in his ancestral line who's from a fire element, that individual will carry this karma with them. Namely, he's being claimed by these type of forces. It's a totally different type of fight that that individual has to carry, as opposed to an individual from a totally different element, from a totally different lineage. Okay? Now, what I must emphasize is that God would have never sent any of us here if he wouldn't have given us the tools and the support, his support and ancestral line support to carry on these fights. So I deeply, deeply believe each and every single individual has the tools to come out victorious at the end of this fight. Everyone. And when I say everyone, I emphasize the karmics, the divines, the twin flames, the soulmates, everyone. Because everyone keeps making this distinction between the karmics and the divines. But in my work, I have been pointing out consistently that both karmics and divine beings are coming from the same place, have been conceived the same way. So this is valid for everyone. This is valid for everyone. So I do believe that the karmics as well, they can actually carry on this fight. And they can actually, but what we all need to do is we need to make responsible decisions and to have divine guidance in choosing the partners, in choosing how we fight, in acknowledging which forces we fight. And of course, if you choose to allow those forces power over you, then it's a different story. That's your choice. But this is why I'm putting the information out there. And I think this information is particularly even more important for the karmics to understand why they are facing what they're facing, why they made the choices they made, and so on. And so, as I was saying, especially when you go through the dark night of the soul, what happens, your subconscious and conscious are merging together. So that's a totally different level of consciousness that you're reaching. And it can be for different reasons at different times. The point is, this is how dark night of the soul works. It can be generated by divine realm, but it can also be generated by a surprise attack. Regardless how it happens, this is what it consists of. So all at that point, you become aware, you see and feel a lot of darkness attacks, and everything you encounter in this level of consciousness is basically what was done on your subconscious level throughout your entire life. It's just that you didn't know because there was a separation of consciousness, which I explained in another video how it works. So basically the two are separated and you don't know consciously what is happening on your subconscious. You have to go through the dark night of the soul and merge the two because you have to integrate into oneness so you can carry on this fight. Much of the darkness it comes from ancestral line. And this is what I kept explaining in this video. Namely that some of the ancestral lines might be claimed by darkness due to their own decisions. And you, as you came, you essentially have to fight that. You have to break that bondage. Okay? And you must clean all of this energy. Of course, you must do the spiritual fighting. You must clean your energy. You must heal you must break the bondage and close the karmic cycles in order to close that. Okay, so this is part of the purpose why you carry on that fight. I think in this message I already conveyed most of the information that I have. And I believe that this is very important to everyone to understand first what is coming to you, but also to understand the type of decisions that you must make. Especially when you decide to become a couple, you must understand that some of the decisions to become a couple might actually destroy you if they are not the right decisions. You must understand why you need God in this, because this is and could be something too strong for you to fight on your own without divine guidance, because much of it comes from ancestral line. So you need to do ancestral healing. You need to understand what was done by previous generations. And you need God, because darkness claims you for different reasons. And the only way actually to understand why it's claiming you is to do ancestral healing and to work with God to receive divine guidance about your own healing, your ancestral healing, but also about the other partner before you make a partnership with someone. This is also helping everyone who must break free from the different toxic relations, and you might get an explanation why somebody is harming you. It might come from this, you know, because it's something from an ancestral line which might be at war with an ancestral line of yours. It might be something from the past that comes to haunt both of you, which you're not remembering right now, but it was the case in the past, right? So as I said, this is very important. I think that doing investigations and working with God is extremely important. You must take the time and essentially just maybe people don't like hearing this, but I will emphasize again, you must do the repentance, the redemption. You must be completely honest in acknowledging what wrong you have done and do your best to right those wrongs, because this is the only way God can come and help you while you are claimed by darkness. When you are claimed by darkness, it means something was done. And you need to be completely honest with this, because this is the only way that God can come and help you. This is the only way that God can come and actually start a war with the darkness, proving your innocence. If you refuse to acknowledge that, as I said before, God cannot intervene. God will help you, give opportunities to you. But you must take those opportunities, because God cannot come if you insist on giving power to the darkness. And again, this video tends to show you that darkness can come from different ways, different places. You cannot, sometimes you cannot even understand it until you finish fighting. Where it came from and how it happened that you had to face specific type of darkness, which you maybe didn't do anything to give it power, but still it claims you. And I just explained in this video how come this can happen, how come a specific type of darkness can claim you. It might not be something related to your generation, not related to what you have done, but it might be related to something or someone from your ancestral line. At the same time, you must keep all of this in mind when you make your decisions, particularly related to couples and to bringing children into this world. Because, again, all of this madness, which I just described, you will give that to your children. So if you and your partner are from totally different lineages which are at war with each other, and you make a child together, this is a crossbreed racial child, and this is a karmic child. Karmic child means that he's going to carry all of this karma, which is extremely heavy in this case. You understand? This is very important because I would imagine everyone who has children wants the best for their children. So you must know that sometimes it might not be acceptable to create a couple with someone if the two of you coming together brings too much darkness upon the successors. You must also understand the significance of you being in a couple with someone. You might be the successor in your lineage, and by making a crossbreed marriage, you or couple or child or so on, that means you give to the other lineage power over your own lineage, over your succession line. This is very important information because, again, we are here in order to ascend. This information is relevant and critical for the spiritual fighting in ascension. If your goal is to ascend, then this information is critical to you and to your decision making. So you will make it easier for yourself to carry on this fight. Otherwise, of course, you can make whatever decisions, but it will be harder for you, and you might make it harder for the other one to go ahead and carry on this fight. You must understand this. And you also must keep in mind the example which I gave you, namely in which the other individual that I was inquiring about, God has shown me, for me it would have been of great help if I would have met that individual. But for him, it would have been impossible to survive if he would have met me. You know, so actually God showed me that the other individual learned about me while he was alive. God has guided me God has guided him because he was in the same city with me, although we were from separate countries. And I said, how come he came in the same city and you didn't even tell me about this? Because I would have learned so much about spiritual fighting from that man. And God showed me that when that individual came in the same city, he knew about me. He came there particularly because he knew about my existence and where I am. But he didn't come to meet me and didn't make any effort to meet me specifically for this. Because God showed him that if he would meet me, he wouldn't be able to continue his spiritual fighting. Because the bondage and the karma, the negative karma he was fighting against, created by his lineage, by the fire lineage, against my lineage and myself, was too heavy. So he wouldn't have been able to continue the fighting if he was in my presence, right? God has shown me that at that particular time, because at that particular time when he was in the same city with me, I didn't even notice his existence, and although he was very famous, so everybody around knew about his presence, but I actually was busy with preparing my departure from that city. So I had to make a certain number of meetings, farewell, goodbye meetings, stuff like this. So I had to organize my departure from that city, going back to Romania. And God said, I specifically guided him to come at that particular time, and I specifically gave you enough things to do so you don't have time to go and meet him. You know, so I'm giving you this example just so you will understand that sometimes the spiritual fighting and staying in light will require you to make wise decisions, knowing that if you have divine guidance, knowing that it's not good it's not good for one of you or both of you to be together, and probably also for the lineage and the purpose why you came here, in order to advance the spiritual fighting of the lineage. Because throughout your spiritual fighting, I explained this, while you heal, you break bondages and you heal yourself, you heal an embodiment from your lineage, which means you transmute darkness which was sent upon your lineage. That is a very deep healing. And please keep this in mind. I'll give you one example in simple words. If I break my bondage, a bondage created on me through my lineage, I transmute darkness over my lineage. That transmutes also darkness over the lineage of those who created the bondage. So God showed me that me and these individuals, if we did our spiritual fighting separate without meeting each other, we succeeded to transmute, each of us transmuted darkness for the other one, although we never met each other because we were fighting against the same bondage. So while he was fighting, he transmuted darkness and cleared karma for his lineage, for the harm done on my lineage. And now that I'm doing my spiritual fighting and he's long gone, I'm transmuting darkness for my lineage, but also from his lineage. And that impacts all the other people who are connected to that lineage. That basically makes it easier for others to carry on their fight. Because I already transmuted some of the darkness. He already transmuted some of the darkness. And throughout my investigation, I actually asked God, because I felt deeply this, and I watched, I investigated in my own life, and I said, I think in that particular year, I was able to, I started to have more revelations and closer dialogue with God because of the spiritual fighting that this individual has done in that particular time, because he won specific battles in spiritual fighting that transmuted darkness, and that helped me, although I never met him, and my revelations became more intense. I had more often dialogue with God and with saints and so on. So I automatically entered a new phase of my spiritual life just because of the darkness transmuted by him doing his own spiritual fighting. I hope this is clear to you. I mean, there are so many ramifications in spiritual fighting, and you impact so many other people's lives through your decisions that it's very difficult to explain it in just a few words. But all of this video that I made right now is meant to, wants to show you the connection between astrology and the elements, and your ancestral line, your karma that you're fighting, the bondages that you try to break, and your own path, but also to shed light on how you should make decisions and what is the impact of decisions in your life. So I hope this helps. I know this will help, actually. If you give it a try and try to seek divine guidance and to understand what exactly is the case in your life. All of this information, I hope you will use to ask divine guidance to shed light for you in your specific case, who did what to whom, and what is the best way to go to clear it and to continue your spiritual fighting and so on. Also, I hope you will use this information in your astral letter to the karmic board meeting in June. So you will learn more about your ancestral line or lines, if it's the case, and also to receive help and guidance on how you can break whatever was created, and what decisions to make next for you to be able to advance in your spiritual fighting. Okay, I will come back with other videos, and I will post this also on my astrology channel, because there I wasn't able to create as much content as here, since I'm doing my own spiritual fighting and healing at the same time. But I have been working on both topics. It's just I didn't succeed to create videos at the same rate on both channels. If you're interested to support my work, you have the information to my PayPal account in the description box below. And if you have any questions, Don't hesitate to ask. I will say again, I usually don't answer questions in the comments, simply because many of the individuals are just trollers, and they are sent only to create strings at me and so on. But I always take in consideration the questions in the videos that I'm making, and whatever questions you pose, I will answer in the next video.